Hello, my Steel City family. Welcome back to yet another episode of SCM MCS Mysterious Crime Stories, Volume 3. I'm your host, T-Rex, and tonight I'm going to bring you a story that takes place just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a local story. It was highlight of the local news stations in Pittsburgh and surrounding areas. This is the story of Dr. Gulam Moonda and his wife Donna. This story takes place in May of 2005. However, I'm going to take you back and give you a brief background on the Moonda family, how they met, and how Dr. Moonda was completely smitten with the young Donna when they met in the 70s. Donna and Gulam Moonda were the envy of many in their small western Pennsylvania town located just at the border of the Ohio line. Donna was an all-American, beautiful blonde girl, an ex-cheerleader, and a good Christian. Gulam was a wealthy, beloved doctor, more than 20 years her senior. He was a devoted Muslim, and he was proud to be from the same part of India as Gandhi. Their romance lasted 25 years until a mystery gunman blew away the flimsy facade of perfection. This incident exposed a marriage fraught with infidelity, drug use, and a treacherous act of betrayal. It was the late 1970s when Donna met Gulam. She was barely out of high school. A cheerleader and friend, Debbie Engelbaugh, said that Donna resisted the relationship at first because she didn't want to be with an older man who would likely leave her a widow. But the charming doctor wooed the pretty blonde girl with lavish gifts, a car, which was a DeLorean. She didn't accept it. She said it was too expensive. All the attention bestowed upon young Donna made observers very jealous. People started to paint Donna as a gold digger. But hey, they were in love. The age difference was a problem for some people, but it wasn't a problem for Gulam and Donna. Eventually, the couple moved into Gulam's striking contemporary home in the lush subdivision of Trout Island. Donna's father took care of the 1.5-acre lot, lined with trees and shrubs. Donna's parents were her best friends. In turn, Donna welcomed Gulam's 14-year-old nephew, Farouk. When he immigrated from India, he became like their surrogate son. The Moondas never had any children of their own. After more than 10 years together, Donna and Gulam finally married in December 1990. At the behest of Gulam's good friend, Ravindra Shaveda. Ravindra and Gulam often prayed together at the mosque. Gulam paid for Donna's education, and she earned 3 university degrees, including a master's in nursing. She quickly found work at a local hospital as a nurse anesthetist. And despite Donna's earlier protest of Gulam's lavish gifts, she seemed to quickly get used to living large. The couple wore fashionable clothes, drove luxury cars, and shared extravagant vacations with her parents and his nephew. Gulam was a big spender. He always carried gobs and gobs of cash in his wallet. Telling his friend Ravindra, "If someone robs me, I want the robber to go away happy." Gulam was equally generous to others. He endowed a chair of Islamic studies at Youngstown State University. He also gave out his home phone number to his patients. He was a wonderful, charitable man with an incredible heart. Ravindra tells us that Gulam treated his wife just as well. There wasn't a hint of any marital strife. But Donna suffered her own personal strife in October of 1998 when her father, Ross Smouse, died of a brain hemorrhage. She was Daddy's little girl, and this marked a major turning point in Donna's life. She wouldn't return phone calls. She wouldn't answer notes. Donna's friend Kim said she only heard through the grapevine of how Donna's health was during this time over the next few years. Donna began suffering from back pain and kidney stones, and Gulam was taking her for all sorts of tests. Ross Smouse's death seemed to take a toll on the couple's marriage. There were always rumors of Gulam having affairs. Whatever the truth was, Donna was hiding secrets of her own. Donna had been taking fentanyl, a painkiller that is 100 times more potent than morphine. At first, it was to ease the back pain from the kidney stones. And it also helped dull the sorrow that she felt after the death of her father. And before long, Donna was hooked. In early 2004, Donna, now 44 years old, was arrested for stealing drugs from the hospital where she worked. She was fired and convicted for theft of narcotics. But Gulam stood faithfully by her side. He even begged the judge for leniency. She was put on probation and sent into rehab. Gulam never told his nephew or his friend Ravindra about any of the problems that were going on with Donna. Donna, however, confided in two acquaintances: her parole officer, Chris Sauter, and a fellow rehab inmate, Damian Bradford. Damian was a handsome 22-year-old street drug dealer who went by the name of Chaos. He had been in and out of trouble for both dealing and using cocaine. After finishing rehab together, Donna and Damian joined the same Narcotics Anonymous group. Damian introduced Donna to his fiancée, Charlene McFraser, at that time. Chris The parole officer warned Donna to stay away. Despite Damien's history with drugs, his lawyer, Michael DeRiso, said that he had a heart of gold. He sold drugs, but he was also one of the nicest kids you would ever want to meet. Donna's friends and family didn't know about her connection with the young drug dealer. However, they did have other reasons to be concerned. In late 2004, Donna told her sister's husband 2 people had threatened Gulam. There was also a mystery phone call around that same time that left Gulam shaken. Then on May 12, 2005, Gulam and Donna made a spooky statement that seemed like a premonition. Gulam told a colleague he was going to Toledo, Ohio, for the first time to see his nephew. His colleague described it as a larger version of Youngstown, and Gulam replied, "Don't tell me that. People shoot each other in Youngstown." The same day, Donna told Chris Sauter she feared for her husband's safety because he always carried thick wads of cash. It was Friday, May 13th, 2005, when Gulam, Donna, and Donna's 74-year-old mother, Dorothy Smouse, set off in their gold Jaguar to meet Farouk and his new wife, Afreen, in Ohio. They stopped for sandwiches at a Turnpike Plaza and paid with a $50 bill from a stack of 50s, totaling $4,000. Donna took the wheel for about an hour before stopping again to change drivers at 6:30 p.m. This time at the emergency pullout was when another car pulled up. A man got out, pulled a gun, and stuck it in Gulam's face. He demanded money. Gulam handed over his wallet without an issue. But the gunman shot Gulam in the temple at point-blank range and then fled. 30 minutes later, Farouk and Afreen were on the Ohio Turnpike, on their way to meet the Moondas when Afreen noticed a gold Jaguar, just like her in-laws, surrounded by emergency vehicles. Farouk called Gulam's cell phone, and Donna answered. She was sobbing that her husband was dead. The Ohio State Patrol, which led the investigation, found a shell casing to a 9mm handgun at the scene. Neither Dorothy nor Donna were able to provide a decent description of the shooter. Dorothy said he may have been black, but wasn't sure. Donna thought he was short, between 5'2" and 5'4". It seemed like a typical highway robbery at first. But 6 days later, 2 informants come forward with information that leads authorities to believe the murder might not have been random. Chris Sauter told investigators of Donna's eerie forewarning. And an anonymous caller claimed Damien was a whole lot more than just Donna's friend from rehab. He was her lover. And that Donna helped buy Damien's $17,000 car. She had even rented an apartment for him. Where Donna's husband Gulam was 23 years her senior, Damien was 22 years Donna's junior. Ironically, she called him daddy, and he called her baby girl. When police searched Damien's home, they found 19 $50 bills and steroids said to have been stolen from Dr. Gulam's office. Not so strange for a drug dealer, but authorities labeled Damien as a person of interest. The tawdry story was all over the news. Friends and family were shattered to hear of Donna's alleged affair and the history of her drug use. When Farouk confronted his surrogate mom, she confessed only to the affair. She said Gulam knew all about it. She claimed they had an understanding. She insisted she had nothing to do with Gulam's death. She also tried to cover for Damien by saying that he couldn't have done it because the man that she saw at the murder scene was much shorter. Charlene McFrazier, Damien's fiancée, came forward to say that Damien could not have been the trigger man because she was with him in Pennsylvania the night of the murder. She also said that Donna and Gulam were on the verge of a divorce. Reason being, Charlene had contacted Gulam to tell him of Donna's affair with her fiancé. Charlene hated Donna Moonda. Officials publicly admitted that Donna stood to benefit from her husband's death. Their prenuptial agreement limited Donna to only $250,000 if they divorced. But if he died, she would receive a substantial portion of his $2 to $3 million estate, as well as 2 life insurance policies of $700,000. Damien Bradford's mother defended Donna on the local news. She said, "She's just a nice girl, and my son is in love with her, and she's in love with him." Damien spent most of 2005 in jail on the steroid charges, and investigators tapped the phones to pick up the conversations between Damien and Donna, hoping to pin something on one of them. But all they heard instead were romantic proclamations. On March 1st, 2006, Charlene McFrazier testified under oath that she was with Damien the night of the murder in Pennsylvania. However, later that spring, cell phone tower tracking indicated that Charlene was in Pennsylvania, but Damien's phone shows up on the Ohio Turnpike. In May, Charlene admitted to lying about being Damien's alibi. It was part of a plea deal. Damien was awaiting trial for interstate stalking in a Youngstown, Ohio jail, now faced with the death penalty. That was when Damien made a plea deal, a bargain of his own. In exchange for a lighter sentence, he admitted to being the trigger man. But he said the mastermind behind the plot to kill the doctor was actually Donna Moonda. Damien agreed to testify against his lover. When Donna stood trial in June of 2007, Damien was the key witness. He told the courts that Donna's relationship with Gulam spiraled out of control after Charlene called Gulam. Gulam had offered Donna $1 million to end the marriage, but she wouldn't divorce him. Donna refused because she wanted the bulk of that inheritance, coupled with the life insurance policy. Damien testified that she was already conspiring to kill Gulam by December. He said she offered to split the money with him if he would do the job. He said he even followed Gulam to the mosque one night to take care of the murder there. But Damien chickened out. That Friday, May 13th, 2005, Damien said he met Donna at noon, picked up MapQuest directions of the route they would take to Ohio. She texted him when it was time to go. Damien trailed them from the plaza to the emergency pull-off. On the stand, Damien professed to love Donna, but in the next breath, he said he was going to dump her as soon as he got paid. Donna's lawyers did their best to discredit Damien's testimony. They point out that he lied under oath before, and that his history of violence is evident in the charges with tying up his girlfriend Charlene and assaulting her in September of 2004. But the jury don't believe that Dawn is innocent. The text messages and the tower tracking records give credibility to Damien's story. In July 2007, Donna Moonda was found guilty of murder for hire and sentenced to life in prison. Damien was sentenced to 17 and a half years for interstate stalking. Damien's lawyer believes that it was a fair sentence. Donna was the mastermind. Damien was the pawn. Donna's friends and supporters never believed in her guilt. They felt that the only fault she made was succumbing to drugs. They felt that she was not a black widow. They continued to show their support. Everyone in the community agrees on one thing: that Dr. Gulam Moonda's murder was a senseless tragedy, one of which the community will never recover. Thank you again for joining me for this episode of SCM MCS. I am your host, T-Rex, and I will see you again next week.